Alright, so before I get started with this video, there's something that I need to get off my chest. I hate this video. I hate it with a burning passion. And it's not because of the negative attention it received. It's not because anything I said in it was necessarily wrong. It's not because I called the Overwatch League a major sport. I just never really said anything of substance. It was basically 2 minutes of me yelling, "Herder, Dragon's bad," and it got 40,000 views because of course it did. And I just can't watch it anymore because every time I do, I'm reminded of that now famous clip of Jane yelling at Silosa.
It just frustrates me to no end when commentators on Twitter and YouTube just distill the problems of teams I'm in plat.
And that's the kind of analyst that I was in that video. Even though it got views, that's not the kind of YouTuber I want to be. So, consider this video my redemption arc. Welcome to the first installment of SiR, or Season in Review. We all know where the Dragons are now, but how did they get there? What led them to their abysmal season? Those are the questions that this video will seek to answer by following the team through the season. Their ups, their downs, and there were a lot of downs, and everything in between. But I think the best way to start is by digging into the roots of the Shanghai Dragons. Alright, so the Shanghai Dragons are owned by a company called NetEase, and unless you live in China, there's a good chance that you've never heard of this company before. NetEase is a Chinese-based company, of course, and it is one of the largest video game and internet companies in the world. More importantly to us, though, NetEase has a regional partnership with Blizzard that allows them to essentially be the Chinese branch of Blizzard, distributing their games and handling Chinese servers. With a company in China this big already having a connection with Blizzard, it makes perfect sense that this would be the first company reached out to when Overwatch League wanted a team based in China. The issue is that NetEase has never owned or operated an esports team before, unlike many other Overwatch League teams who are based on established esports companies. Would the inexperience come to haunt them? Spoiler alert, yes. The Dragons roster debuted with 8 players, making it one of the smaller rosters in the league. Roshan, MG, and Zushu were on tank, Dia and Undead were on DPS, and finally, Altering, 5 King, and Freefeel were on support. There were a lot of questions surrounding this roster. Sure, a few of them were taken from LGD Gaming and Team CC, who came in 2nd and 3rd in Contenders China respectively. They also got U4, the coach from LGD. However, many of their other players played solely in the Overwatch Premier Series, which is exclusively in China and are unfamiliar with the world stage. Also, Miraculous Youngster, considered by many to be the most talented team in China, were left completely untouched. There were also some players taken from teams who didn't perform very well at all in Contenders, but the Dragons have a plan, right? Right? Alright, I'm not gonna bullshit around here. The Stage 1 Dragons were absolutely terrible. How terrible? Well, you had to go down to 8th place in the standings to find a team with less match wins than Shanghai's map wins. We could talk about lack of coordination or poor coaching, but really the sad truth here is that the Dragons were simply outmatched by every other team in the league. Other than Dia, the lone bright spot, every Dragon was vastly underperforming. Roshan was diving in alone all the time and dying on Winston. For every map that Undead carried on McCree or Widow, you could pick out 2 maps where he did absolutely nothing. 5 King, Freefeel, and Altering were swapped in and out constantly on support, and none of them were effective. They finished Stage 1 without a single match win. There was hope on the horizon though. RUI, the coach of Miraculous Youngsters, was finally signed to the team. U4 stepped down soon after, making it clear that RUI was going to be his eventual replacement. Meanwhile, the signing window was about to open, giving them the chance to stop the bleeding. There's not really much else to say. The Dragons were bad, but hopefully they would get better. In a season of lows, Stage 2 somehow managed to be the lowest of them all for the Dragons. Pop quiz, guys. How many maps do you think the Dragons won this stage? Get your guess. Get your guess. Got your guess? Good. You're wrong. It's 2. The Dragons won 2 maps throughout the entire stage. That is unfathomably bad, and it doesn't even end on the stage. Yes, while the Great Dallas Fuel bonfire was raging, the Dragons were quietly dealing with some drama of their own. The DPS player Undead was coming under a lot of fire from his ex-girlfriends, yes, I say girlfriends as a plural, on a Chinese social media platform called Weibo, where he was accused of, quote, unfaithfulness, emotional manipulation, and involvement in multiple pregnancies / abortions. I mean, come on, dude. How hard is it to stay loyal and keep it in your pants? I mean... Anyways, Undead went back to China, and the Dragons released him from their roster unceremoniously. While they didn't give a reason why, it is assumed that it was due to the allegations. At the same time, their other DPS player, Dia, also went back to China, though the reason for doing so was kept tightly under wraps. And Dia was not released and ended up coming back near the start of Stage 3. This still meant that there was a period of time in late Stage 2 where the Dragons had literally no DPS players on their active roster, forcing them to run triple tank all the time or flex players on the roles they weren't comfortable with. Even with all of that though, optimism had never been so high in the Shanghai Dragons fanbase. Why? Because at the beginning of Stage 2, the Dragons announced 4 new acquisitions: Fearless and Gaguri on tank, Otto on DPS, and Sky on support. The first 3 were all Korean, a first for a team that had initially wanted to stay completely Chinese. Sky, though, was Chinese. Fearless was supposed to be a huge upgrade over Roshan on main tank, even if that wasn't too difficult to do. Otto gave the team a true Genji and projectile player, something that they had never really had before. Sky, the sole Chinese acquisition, was the first and only player from Miraculous Youngsters to ever get on the team, and hopefully take up Zenyatta and flex support duties from Freefeel, who had been struggling a lot. Finally, Gaguri would take the off-tank rings from MG. Gaguri is also significant for being the first and currently only female player to ever play in the Overwatch League. And so as far as the fans were concerned, they just had to get through this stage. Once Stage 3 commenced and all the new acquisitions got their visas, things would improve. Go forth, Dragons! Greener pastures await! Good news, Shanghai! You won 4.5 times more maps in Stage 3 than Stage 2. Which doesn't seem nearly as impressive when you remember how many wins they had in Stage 2. Oh well. Dia still wasn't back in the States yet at the start of Stage 3, so the Dragons quickly announced that Damon from Energy Esports would be joining the team. Though it is widely considered that this decision was based more on convenience than anything else, as he was already in the area and could quickly come and fill in. And that he did, and he was serviceable until Dia came back, but mostly played a bench role from then on. So as far as individual talent, the Dragons were much improved. Dia's Genji play was quite good, and played a decent Junkrat and Tracer. Gaguri took on D.Va and did a good job as well. Together they formed what are the 2 brightest spots on the team according to most fans. Fearless was now the full-time main tank, and was okay, but still much better than Roshan. Well, there were, however, 2 big problems with the team in Stage 3, one of which was Sky. After seeing a bit of play at the start of the stage, Sky was relegated to pretty much permabenched behind Freefeel and Zenyatta. You know, the guy most considered to be the worst Zenyatta in the entire league. People would constantly wonder how such a talented Zenyatta was doing on the bench, as Freefeel was still struggling despite small improvements. Sure, Sky didn't impress very much during his few visits to the stage, but most say that he wasn't given a fair chance quite yet. Though, the other issue was much more serious, and it is of course the language barrier. Once Thea returned, the starting 6 was split down the middle. Otto, Fearless, and Gaguri spoke Korean, Dia, Altering, and Freefeel spoke Chinese. Trying to learn either language is extremely difficult for the opposite side, and for a while the Dragons didn't even have an official translator on staff, so communication was a constant issue. It's kinda hard to play Overwatch when your team essentially functions as 2 halves instead of a whole. This was expected to improve, however, and optimism was high going into the final stage of the season. Could the Shanghai Dragons finally get their first win? Yeah, it didn't happen. As soon as everything seemed to be on the upswing, it kinda stagnated and then just fell apart again. The language barrier proved to be an insurmountable wall for the Dragons. I mean, imagine all that must go through a pro Overwatch League player's head in a game. I mean, even apart from gameplay, you have to keep track of cooldowns and ults, and now imagine doing that while trying to decipher calls in a language that you have just a couple months of experience in. And if that wasn't enough, head coach RUI left the team and went back to China, citing health issues, which is all fine and good. I hope he gets better. Oh wait, he accepted a coaching job for the Chinese Overwatch World Cup team not even a month later. Alright. Also, MG ended up leaving the team on mutual terms, which I guess is fine considering he had allegedly been playing more PUBG than Overwatch as of recent.
According to a post on China's most popular gaming forum, NGA, Chinese Overwatch fans became furious after a post was made revealing how some members of the Shanghai Dragons appeared to have been spending more time playing PUBG than practicing Overwatch. Images from the match history database, which tracks games played, reveal that MG, Roshan, and Zushu, among others, have been playing at least a dozen games of PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds a day.
In the end, they got close a couple of times, but Shanghai finished Season 1 of the Overwatch League without a single match win to their name. The Shanghai Dragons suffered a failure of historic proportions this season, and in the end, they really only had themselves to blame. They were doomed from the start by taking a chance on unproven Chinese players who didn't pan out. And then from the rotating door of coaches, the mid-season reshuffle of players, the unshakable language barrier, the Dragons just never had a stable leg to stand on. I guess the one good takeaway this season is now they're everyone's second favorite team, rooting for them unless they face their real favorites. And as far as the future goes, they have a few decent pieces like Otto and Giguri to potentially build a team around, but drastic changes need to be made if they want even a lick of success next season, and I think it has to start at the top. What I see here is a front office that maybe showed favoritism towards certain players, or maybe they went for the cheapest options, but they sure didn't go for the best options. With all that in mind, my final grade for the Shanghai Dragons in Season 1 of the Overwatch League is a big fat F. Unacceptable. See me after class. And that's it. The first season has been reviewed, and hopefully I'll be able to do one of these for every Overwatch League team. That is my goal. And so let me know what you think of this format and your general thoughts of its execution in the comments below. Since it is a new series, I am very open to changing it up if you guys think it could be better if I do it a different way. Also, if you liked it, you can not only just subscribe, you can also follow my Twitter, my Twitch, and you can join my Discord server. Links to all three will be in the description, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace nut.